So I'm not coming from just a very superficial background. Since I've lived during the war, I was born in Rome during World War II time, 1945, and my father was in the diplomatic corps, and I really kind of like that, because if there's anything that I really want to do here in my lifetime, it's deal with exopolitics. I'm really, really happy that Michael Salla is changing the name of ufology to exopolitics. For me, it's a lot more serious. It's something that has to be done. It is, it implies that we've already had contact, so we don't have to start looking at the night sky for all these little lights and say maybe there are extraterrestrials. What we're dealing with, even with Michael's coming forth, and he's really brilliant, and he's a professor, I don't know if you've heard him speak, with exopolitics, and with Stephen's naming this conference, Conference of Exopolitics, is, yeah, we already know this is a situation. Now, how do we handle it? What kind of protocol do we have for extraterrestrial beings? And let's hope we are not putting them in zoos, in cages, and that kind of thing that I was talking about yesterday, okay? Because I really do not want to be part of anything like that in my lifetime. This is my book in Italian. This is called Il Mistero Svelato. And what I wanted to tell you was, it's ever so important that I bridge the gap between Italy and America. Italy, America, Europe, America. Because what happens here in Washington, D.C. needs to get out of Washington, D.C. All right, if it just stays here this weekend, we're not going anywhere with this. This has to go out into the world. We should have Euro television, coming in here and completely broadcasting this whole thing live to all the people that would like to be here seated with you. There are so many people. I speak in Belgium, in Switzerland, in Germany. I speak all over Europe about this, and people are frozen in their seats. They want to know. They really would like the information. And because I am a spokesperson for witness testimony, most of it military, these people aren't thinking that what I'm saying is hokey. They're sitting in their chairs going, oh my God, we did not know. I mean, I spoke to the Erich von Däniken Society in Germany, and those people that were in their 60s and 70s were fascinated with something they always knew was true because they got the verification from me. I really invite you, and I really encourage you to do what you can to move this out of Washington, not physically, because we can do it in Washington, it's wonderful, but move it into the world, because there are so many people like you out there that want to hear this, that want the details, that would love to meet Stanton Friedman and Rich Dolan and all those people, but can never come over here. So if you want to work with Stephen Bassett to get it out into the world, to have a Eurovision, have Eurovision come in here, to have it come out of here, I really encourage you, and that is probably my function here in this particular conference. I had told you about my background. I have 2 grown children who don't want to talk about UFOs, and they live in Boulder, Colorado. It's been very difficult to deal with the subject matter in my family. My mother, however, lives with me in Rome. We have an apartment near the Vatican. I teach school at the American Overseas School of Rome. I teach ancient history, and I teach photojournalism, so that I have a full-time job which pays for this. I'm not funded by anybody. This is totally freelance. So when I go ahead and publish my book in Italy, I am publishing it myself, and I am bringing over information from the United States, from which they're just so hungry for this information. Because yes, we have sightings in Italy, but we don't have the amount of material you have in the States. My book on the back has Travis Walton, who's giving me an award for Researcher of the Year that was done in Italy this year. My part of my job is to bring over speakers, and I financed bringing Travis Walton. And what I would like to show you, which we're not ready to set up yet, is Travis Walton's appearance in primetime Italian television. It was amazing, because there were over 20 to 40 million people watching, and Travis Walton comes on, and the announcer in Italian television comes on, and he says, okay, he says, this is the most important story that Italian television can ever tell you people. This is a person that is very credible, that was abducted 28 years ago. And this was 10 minutes on Italian Rai of Travis Walton telling the absolute truth, and people believing it. People were in shock, including the person that was doing the interviewing. I'd love to show that to you as soon as we got this set up. Yeah, I was just, Stephen, I was just telling the people, I would love to move this with Eurovision out of Washington into the world, because there are so many people in Europe that would love to be sitting here listening to this.
We'll do that.
It's very, very important, because they come to conferences in Belgium, in Switzerland. We have Guido Ferrari here. I don't know if you heard me speaking Italian with this curly-haired gentleman who heard me speak in San Marino and came over with his wife to do the documentary for Switzerland from this conference. So it means it moves it out of Washington. It moves it worldwide where it should be. And Guido Ferrari is paying for his own way to come here and to document. He's been doing interviews with everybody here. Now, whatever documentary comes out of this will bring this conference worldwide where it belongs, you know, so that everybody has access. Maybe someday we'll do teleconferencing from Europe. We could do Eric Van Dunigan. I mean, I have this vision. Eric Van Dunigan, who started all this with Charity of the Gods, lives in Switzerland. If we could just do that and have a teleconferencing question and answer with Eric Van Dunigan, it would be incredible. Or go to, you know, Helmut Lammer, who did Mill Labs, lives in Austria. You know, so there's possibilities here. I'm seeing very much in the international vein possibilities.
Yes, and it's bi-directional, because there are people outside, just like you mentioned, Eric Van Dunigan. He's not the only one, but also Russian people.
Yeah, the Russian, you're right, there's a lot of Russian cosmonauts that are speaking that would be wonderful if they could teleconference in here. Yeah.
Where's your tape?
Here it is. Here it's all cued. It's cued. Okay. It's cued. All right, so you know these are dreams I have. I have to share the dream because it's a disclosure dream for me too. In fact, I haven't spent any time sitting at my table there where the books are and everybody's complaining. But I have to cover this story for Europe, so I do not sit there and sell books. I can't do it. However, my book is out, and I'll tell you about it. It's called Connecting the Dots, and it has 26 interviews of top-level people, including David Icke. Everybody's wondering about David Icke. I spent 2.5 hours with David Icke. He's one of the most fascinating people I interviewed. These are the people that are in the book: Colonel Philip Corso, Zecharia Sitchin. Zecharia Sitchin's interview here was just after the Baghdad Museum had been sacked. So I got an interview with Zecharia Sitchin that I put right away in here. Robert Dean, Leo Sprinkle, Alan Hynek, who I'm very emotionally attached to. Yesterday I had tears in my eyes when Stephen gave the award to Alan, because I was with Alan in the final days when he was having trouble. And it was Alan that taught me how to investigate. Alan's manner, the way he questioned, was really, he was the best of teachers. Richard Sigismund, who was one of Alan's greatest friends, who is in Boulder, Colorado. He is in this also. Linda Moulton Howe, personal friend. Monsignor Corrado Balducci is in this book. Word for word what he said. Richard Boylan, David Icke, Stephen Greer, Clifford Stone, Ed Fouché. I did one of the first interviews with Ed Fouché. Alien Rapture, worked at Area 51. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about Michael Wolff-Cruant, who is probably one of the most intense, emotional, and incredible interviews I have ever done. And the relationship with Michael Wolff was something that I think you all should know about. Guy Andronique, he was a French geophysicist who saw UFOs fly over the base in Polynesia when he was working as a geophysicist after they had exploded 8 atomic bombs, or H-bombs, on the island of Fangatofa. And his interview, and I have it on video, but you don't understand Italian, so I couldn't bring it. He speaks about these flying over as the bomb, you know, the damage of the bomb was so evident all over the beaches. What are they doing flying over Fangatofa after the French are doing atomic bomb testing? Does that tell you something, like Richard Hoagland would say? Okay, let's go to Richard Hoagland. People ask me about him. He is the most incredibly unrelenting researcher on the planet. I don't care what people say. I end up defending him all over the place, but the man is a researcher. He spends 12 to 14 hours a day looking at Mars. He doesn't do anything else, because when I go to visit them, I can't even go out to dinner with them. He's so intent on watching Mars that I've got to say that man has dedicated his life to his mission. So the way that Richard Hoagland operates for me is indicative of what his intention is. And you know, he's very much from my generation. I heard him talk about the honeymooners, and you know how old I am, so he's of the Walter Cronkite generation, where he's able to link things together with stories about how it was when the dream was alive. I love the way that Richard speaks about that, because I lived during those times. I talk about him here as the single most important research method. I like the way he researches things. Clark McClellan, ground crew astronaut, NASA. I went to visit him because he contacted me after Michael Wolff died, and I talk about the fact that when I do an interview, I have to see them in the face. I mean, I have to sit with them for hours. I sat with Clark McClellan in a Denny's for 3 days, and I taped things that I could never print, and he basically told me that he had seen UFOs, it's in the book, over the space shuttle, but he told me a lot of other stories that he asked me not to print. It made me understand and connect the dots personally. He worked for NASA for 22 years, so he is a wealth of information. He has a book. He will have a book coming out. Dr. Richard Sauter, you know, Richard is here at this conference, and he ties it all up with bases, underground bases and tunnels. In this book is Alex Collier, who is the only contactee I put in the book. He lives in Boulder, so it was easy to do, but he has a very interesting story.
Hold on, Paola, for a second. See if I can get this to stop doing that volume.
Okay. Eljo Hasselhoff is in Holland, and I encourage Stephen to invite him here. He's a crop circle expert who works for Philip Corporation, who does an incredible presentation, a very good speaker, and he is very objective, because you know there's a little battle in the crop circle community there. But he is from Holland and speaks beautiful English, can absolutely do a scientific analysis that will make you understand something about crop circles. Daryl Sims, personal friend, implants, very important implants. The only thing is that even though I do not agree with the conclusion that comes with implants, I will fight for the right for people to talk about their research. I do not make any conclusions in this book, so I want everybody to read everything. Ingo Swann, if you've ever heard of Ingo Swann, Russell Targ, Paul Smith, Courtney Brown, Uri Geller. This is the paranormal part of my book. People do not understand that at the end I talk about the paranormal. You cannot look at the UFO phenomena without the paranormal. I'm sorry. If you're doing that, you never get to anywhere. Uri Geller was the single most important phenomenon in the 1970s. Steven Spielberg knew him, Francis Ford Coppola knew him, the remote viewing people knew him. Uri Geller was contacted by what he calls light beings when he was 3 years old. I have been with Uri Geller in several conferences. He and I are very good friends. He is the most amazing, strange, and enigmatic person you can possibly imagine. And if I had to... Yeah, when he was 3 years old, you can ask me questions about Uri Geller at the end of my presentation, because Uri is the key to everything. I couldn't believe it. And it was given to me in 1970 when I began I was just interested in why somebody who would bend spoons would be in the United States. And then I thought, you know, years later, I'm thinking, what is the Uri Geller connection to all this? I didn't know that the CIA and NASA paid $250,000 to have him examined, and what could have happened from this. And he talks about this openly, it's in the public domain. They wanted to make him a lethal weapon. They asked him to stop the heart of a mouse first, then of a pig, and he said he ran when that happened. So we've got mind control, ESP abilities that they say don't exist, but why are you spending $250,000? And Werner von Braun was behind that too. So he says, I talked to Russell Targ about this, who's a personal friend of mine, and he said, Werner von Braun had a psychic grandmother. I said, it couldn't just be that. He said, no, he believed that there were these abilities. Now, in the case of Uri, there are two people that I feel are very strange that could possibly have a hybrid situation. They are Michael Wolff and Uri Geller. Both of them are Israeli. Both of them are Jewish. Both of them have the same physiognomy. Michael was physically strange as far as he didn't have any pupils. His pupils were totally black. His eye was black. You couldn't even see it. And when you shine a flashlight into his eye, you saw this green circle. I saw his medical records. He had a cholesterol of like 1,000 and a triglyceride count of 1,400. I've got it in my book. He was not physically someone that could be walking around, and yet he was very, very different. He had what I call, if you can understand the word, the same vibration as Uri Geller. And around Michael Wolff, when I was doing the story, some very strange things happened. Like around Uri Geller, because Uri Geller has a telekinetic ability besides bending spoons. When you're around Geller and he gets angry, there are things that happen. Sir John Whitmore told me that an ashtray had raised up off the table and followed him to the elevator when Uri was angry at him and then dropped. Now that is not normal. I talked to Russell Targ about things that happened in Russell Targ's home when Geller was present, where clocks would appear in the room, books would be flying around. I mean, these are things that are probably very natural abilities that we could probably have, could we ever develop our psychokinetic abilities. Who says that? Ingo Swann says that. Oh no, that's not the one that I want to use though.
No, we'll,
Oh, okay.
we're going to cue it for you. We're
Okay,
almost
that's
there
not the one. That's not the video. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to show Colonel Corso at the end. This is Travis Walton. So that's the book. That is what is in the book. And
take him out of his environment. He faded very fast.
Questo, trovandosi fuori da questo suo ambiente, a sua volta è venuto a mancare molto rapidamente.
That's language. That language. I don't understand it. What is that? It's not English, is it?
è italiano.
Oh my God.
Italiano.
You speak Italian?
Chi esiste realmente
Hang on.
un
Okay. Now,
Italiano.
what you want to do is we want to what? Cue this back a little bit. Hang on a second.
50 anni dopo quello
Okay.
che è successo.
No, there's the day after
All
Roswell.
right, watch.
Yeah.
Let's cue it back and tell me when to stop.
No, but I really don't want to show that
You're not
first.
going to show this at all.
I'm going to show it at the end. This
But
is what
where do
I'm.
you want me to start it? When
Way
you show
back,
it?
way back.
Keep
This
going
one,
back.
yeah.
We're going back real fast here.
Ah, Phil, you come up here, Phil. This is Colonel Corso's son, Phil Corso Jr. He's part of my family. And you have to leave?
Oh, he's got time. He has a
Well,
first
no,
date.
well, I know. Well, I'm sorry. This is the way it is. So, hey, come on up here. Sit.
By the way,
Come on here. It's family.
very few people have seen the Italian interview tapes. Very few. I've never seen them. So this is like real special.
Well, you know, this is where he spoke. He spoke in Italy, and he didn't get the chance to speak here, and I really feel bad about that. You know, this is the only copy of the only, time he spoke, and I would like.
Let me tell him why he went to Italy.
Yeah, go ahead.
My dad named Repinelli, met a captain at the time, and they were in Sicily, and the Italians hadn't come over
Okay,
yet.
thank you. You can just leave it there.
So they were out sitting on a rock, and they were eating their lunch with this Italian soldier. They're supposed to be enemies. My dad spoke all the dialects, and he was talking to this Italian soldier, and they weren't shooting.
Okay, that's just fine. Okay, we left it. Okay, thank you.
Pardon me?
Abbiamo visto una strana luce che veniva attraverso le case. Abbiamo visto questo.
Wait a minute. I have to do it. I have to rewind. I have to rewind.
Okay, you want to rewind?
Yeah.
Just play this, and then after it gets going, rewind it there.
E mi sono avvicinato.
It was where the Germans used their 88s to zero in their 88 cans, and they're sitting there eating. Anyway, they became best of friends, and his wish was that he would go back to Italy before
He passed away.
and see Repinelli again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Repinelli switched this whole team, this whole battalion over to the American side right there on the spot. Yeah. Yeah, so he went back and he fulfilled his wish through Paula. And I met Paula at Roswell. She was a student. And she said, I can interview with that guy. And I said, I'm his son.
It was destiny. Talk about destiny.
Deal. And she had, my dad, you had to get my dad a trip to Italy. So she went and called her boss and got my dad a trip.
Yeah, that's the story. Okay, I want you to see something here that'll come out. This part is a little weird, but I brought Travis Walton to Italy this year, and this is how primetime Italian television covered it. Wait a minute, it'll be better.
Is that Travis?
No, wait a minute. This is Paolo Bonolis. This is a major television show in Italy on Sunday. Paolo Bonolis took a chance because this is going to be on prime time. This had the highest rating. Oh, he had Daryl Sims 2 weeks ago.
Che ci ha raccontato della sua attività, la sua attività di investigatore per attività extraterrestri e nonché psicoterapeuta di persone rapite. Io non so se la nostra musica che sottolinea questo momento
way they did it, which I love, because the Italian television has to have this drama, you know.
Perché oggi noi vi vogliamo raccontare una storia molto particolare, quindi per cercare di gettare anche un po' di luce.
We want to give a little bit of light to this UFO question.
Siamo soli.
Are we alone in the universe?
Onore per me presentarvi quest'oggi Mr. Travis Walton.
It is an honor for me to introduce you to Travis Walton. And this is the way we deal with it, without ridicule.
Travis Walton è una storia molto particolare. La sua
It's a story very particular his.
storia che la Rai Radio Televisione
The most important story the Radio Televisione Italiana can ever tell people.
è il più famoso
It's the most famous
dagli
abducted person in the history of ufology. He's only 50.
in Arizona.
He's born in Arizona.
E il 5 novembre
The
del
5th of November in 1975, he was abducted by extraterrestrials.
talmente ricca di particolari,
This story is so rich in detail.
è la storia più famosa
It's a story that's most famous.
stata vissuta e raccontata, che nel 1993 ne è stato tratto anche un film.
The movie Fire in the Sky came out.
Io vorrei con lei
I would-
ripercorrere questa storia,
I would like with you to go over your story.
fosse anche per noi motivo di ulteriori ragionamenti.
This for us would be a way of reflecting on something very important, he says. These words are very important.
Nel 1975 lei era con dei suoi amici.
5th of November, you were walking in the forest.
Come è successo?
How did this happen?
I was one of 7 men. Io facevo parte di un gruppo di 7 persone, eravamo dei bottiglioni.
I was one of 7 men working, you know Travis Walton's story, in the forest, and we saw this great light.
Ce ne stavamo andando, si stava facendo scuro. Quando abbiamo visto una
It was dark, and then all at once we saw this big light, and I went up to it.
vicino alla strada, abbiamo fermato il camioncino, io sono sceso e mi sono avvicinato per vedere più da vicino. A un certo punto
And this blast hit me in the...
mi ha colpito proveniendo dalla navicella spaziale e i miei colleghi hanno pensato che io fossi rimasto ucciso.
And my friends thought I was dead, so they left me there in the forest.
Dallo sceriffo della contea.
He said the sheriff has also prosecuted these men for murder, right? Because he was missing for 5 days. You know this story.
Incriminati per omicidio.
Homicidios murder. They were taken in for murder, and they all had lie detector tests about what they saw.
This is true, they were accused
This is,
of sono stati accusati di avermi ammazzato.
he says they were accused of having killed me.
Macchina della verità.
He says, but they, took lie detector tests and realized that what the story was telling was true.
Hanno fatto questo test della macchina della verità dall'istituto più efficace e più affidabile degli Stati Uniti e hanno passato l'esame.
They actually passed a lie detector test.
Proprio alla sua di storia, quei 5 giorni.
Those 5 days, what do you remember those 5 days?
Well, the first thing I remember is la prima cosa che mi ricordo è che sono risvegliato disteso su un lettino.
I was lying on a bed, he said,
Un dolore fortissimo.
and I had like a lot of pain.
Creature sopra di me. Non appena l'ho vista mi sono reso
As soon as I saw them, he says, I got very scared and I jumped off the bed and I grabbed something that he told me was a crystal or something and was going to throw it at them.
questo periodo di tempo, di quei 5 giorni. Gran parte di questo periodo di coscienza ho cercato di spenderlo cercando un modo per scappare.
I tried to find some way of running away, he said.
Saremo assolutamente incredibili.
He said, these are absolutely
Noi diamo
incredible.
un attimo la linea alla pubblicità e quando torneremo qui vivremo insieme a Mr. Travis Walton tutte quelle emozioni di una storia assolutamente unica che può cambiare completamente il modo di pensare.
He said, this is a story, and I like the way this announcer put it. He said, this is a story that is so unique, it will change the way we think. Now, for somebody to go on prime time with 20 million people in Italy and say, this story is so unique, it'll change the way we think. Can you see this happen on CBS, ABC, or CNN? It's like these people, in this 10 minutes, we're listening to a very credible, I don't know if you know Travis, he is extremely credible. He is still working in Snowflake, Arizona, 13-hour days. He and his wife were with me this year. They were at my home because I'm the one that brought them there. I paid for them to come to a conference. And the RAI took advantage of their being there, and that is my very small contribution to disclosure worldwide. Because what happened with this? When he asks Travis, he says, well, tell us about what the implications are. Travis said, aren't you a little nervous about talking about, he said to Bonales, aren't you a little nervous about talking about this to the world? And Bonales says, it is our obligation to make people think. This is the answer. And then Travis, he says, what do you think they're like? Because you know, in the Travis Walton story, he meets the Greys, which are the ones that he said they were, there was no malintentioned whatever. The movie is all not done correctly. It's done Hollywood style. There was no, examination and floating in all those bodies that you see inside. That was all Hollywood. He was very angry about that. He said he believed possibly that when he had that, I'm thinking in Italian here, that thing of light that hit him, he thought maybe he was dead, and what those Greys were doing on that table was bringing him back to life. Now he realizes it's possible that they could have revived him, and when he woke up and was so confused and wanted to hurt them, he said he went with his hand to push them aside. They just turned around and walked out of the room. I mean, I don't think that's malevolent. They turned around and walked out of the room. He tried to get out of there. He said, and what had happened was he ran through the ship, saw this one big room that had a chair that had a lot of buttons. He tried to push the buttons to see if he could open some door in the ship. And he said he turned around in the hallway. He saw a blonde humanoid person with a helmet. And he said, finally, there's somebody who can understand. He walked up to this blonde with perfect features. And the blonde gentleman did not, there's actually photographs in the book and designs in Travis's Light in the Sky that show you what the blonde looked like. And he took him by the arm, took Travis out of the craft into a hangar that Travis believes is a government hangar. So it gets really complicated, this story. He walks down a ramp in the hangar. He sees two other blondes that look exactly alike. One is a woman, and she has like a mask. And she goes up to Travis, and she puts a mask on his face. And he doesn't remember anything else until he's by the side of the road 5 days later. So we got a story here that's absolutely amazing. It's absolutely true. He said in 1970, the 70s, he said the FBI, everybody was at his house waiting for him to come back because they knew that he had been. My question as a journalist was, I know you guys were cutting logs there. What in the world was a UFO doing in that zone? I said, what was it doing there? And we're sitting over pizza in Rome, and Travis says to me, he says, that's a good question. Nobody's ever asked me. I said, what was happening in your town at that time, in the 70s? He said, we had like an atomic bomb testing in Nevada, and we had like this backwind come over into our town. A lot of people were having cancer, and they were basically going to the doctor to find out what kind of cancer they had, and if they would be recompensed for their illnesses. I said, you had radiation in that area from some kind of testing that was done in Nevada and Snowflake, Arizona? Backwind was bringing this stuff over there. Does that answer a question? What a UFO might have been doing in that area? Since I've been doing research for 20 years, UFOs appear over nuclear sites or over areas that are contaminated on Earth and are measuring this level. I said, does that tell you something, Travis? He said, yeah, nobody's ever asked me that question before. And we're looking at what that thing was doing there. What was it doing in the forest? It was fairly low. They all saw it. And Travis said at that time he had been young. So he went up and said, hi. He jumped out of the truck, which is a stupid thing to do, a very macho thing. He ran up and he said, here I am. He should never have done that because he got a blast right in the stomach that threw him up in the air where people believed he was dead. He could have been dead, all right? He could have died. We're not quite sure what all happened there. Now, this story is extremely important. I'm trying to tell you that my way of connecting the dots is putting all the stories of everybody together to try to figure out who they are, why they're here, what's going on, and it's totally complicated. It is a cosmic minestrone, the way we talk in Italy. Minestrone has every kind of vegetable in there. Okay, so this is a cosmic minestrone. And so I wanted to show you what we do on Italian television that is so very important, how we present these things. So, I gave you a little bit of an insight. Now, I don't know how much time I have because I want to leave enough time for questions and answers. Travis Walton and John Mack and Linda Howe were in Italy this year alone to talk to Italian people, and they're very well accepted, and it was a very serious situation. We deal with this as a scientific study, as curiosity, as a lot of other things. I have now something that I wanted to show you, because I'm going to leave the Corso material for the end, because I know you'll have a lot of questions. How many people have heard about my work with Dr. Michael Wolff, Cruvan? Okay. I talked to Michael Wolff with the permission of Jim Courant, who is here. He is a researcher, and I have to say this because I have been completely inundated with negative emails about my work with Michael Wolff Cruvan. That's the only way I could put it lightly. And the reason why I responded, the reason why I talked about being women in ufology is a whole bunch of people came after me for that. And I felt what they said was, you're getting involved with your stories, so you were not objective. And I happened to list all the male researchers that went to do this story that did not pick up on it. Who were they? Michael Hesseman left a cab waiting for 9 hours outside Michael Wolff's apartment. He must have thought Michael Wolff was interesting. Michael Wolff gave him a piece of UFO, which, thank God, he took out of the country, took to Germany, Michael Hesseman, had it analyzed, and I have the report in my book. This is the Italian version of Catches of Heaven. Yeah. Oh, you have a piece of the... Okay, you have a piece of it here.
My friend Chuck says that
Right.
you're welcome to have a piece.
Oh,
And we'll
thank
give
you.
the big one in case you want to break off a piece to send to a researcher.
Whoa.
I don't think all of us know the whole story.
Yeah,
but
can I
we're
tell you?
very clueless
Okay.
what's going on.
Okay. Okay. Okay, let me go backwards. Thank you for Chuck Guzzi went to see Michael Wolff and did a lot of research before me. And these are some friends of Chuck Guzzi. This piece, I know where these pieces came from. It was given to him by some military people, okay? Because Michael was very sick. And what had happened was, in drinking, if you drink water where these pieces are, in other words, if you put it in a glass, you drink water, and these pieces, it does something to the water, it electromagnetically, where it makes you feel better, or it could heal you. And that's what Michael was using these for. No, don't you do it, because I don't, Michael was, what did I say about Michael Wolff? I said he was very strange, that the only other person that reminded me of him is Uri Geller. So Michael had a completely different physiognomy than we had, trust me. So anyway, going back to this, Michael, my piece that he had given to me, he told me specifically to give to Bill Hamilton. So I did what I was told, because I could have kept it. And I gave it to Bill Hamilton to be examined. And that's controversial, so I don't touch it there. He gave a piece to Adriano Forgione, who was the other researcher with me that came to see Michael Wolff, because I was so nervous about visiting somebody that had worked in Black Ops that was not physically, healthy. He was dying when we, dealt with him, and for 2 years that we did this story. That he was in an apartment in West Hartford, that nobody went there, that was completely, he was like, he never came out of his house. He was like this genius scientist that was sequestered in this apartment, and only spoke by phone to people. So I said, I'm not going there by myself. It's in a real weird, it's in a very low-income area of Hartford. And so I dragged and paid for my colleague, Adriano Forgione, to come with me. Because when I do some stories, as I'm doing a story now with a pilot from Frontier Airlines, I'm doing an incredible story, I usually drag somebody else with me. I've got to do a story in twos for many reasons. Sometimes when I'm doing the story, I think I'm going crazy, so I have to talk to somebody about it and say, do you think what I think, or do you feel what I feel? Is he telling the truth? Where can we go with this? So I'm going off on a tangent, but I worked on this story with a male. So when we go through this female stuff that, you get involved in your stories, you don't listen to this stuff. Michael Hesseman went to see Michael Wolff. He parked the cab out there for 9 hours, talked to him, found him credible, took the piece, and came to Italy to a conference, and that's the first time we ever heard of him. Jim Courant, who is also a pilot for, I think it's US Air, he's here. Went to see him, did a story, did a video, went to, I think, Japan, aired the video, and had a relationship with Michael where they spoke all the time, and Jim found him credible. There are so many people that did not go there. You have to go there in person to have met this man. He was, if you've ever seen A Beautiful Mind, he reminded me a lot of Michael. That was the John Nash story, okay? what happened is that when I went with Adriano Forgiani, we found his story so fascinating that we had it translated into Italian. So the Italian people who got to read this book, and this is what happens with my job. I can disseminate information all over the world if I take a story on. This is the Catchers of Heaven. You cannot buy it anymore because it is not on Amazon. It's cost $150 for a used copy. It's been taken off. For some reason, you cannot get the book anymore. If you get it, it's unusual. We have the Italian copies. I want to tell you something. This is a photograph of a gray, but not a Zeta Reticula gray. This is a child type gray because there are some 20 different races of grays. They are not all the same, so we can't make these generalizations. This is a photograph of a humanoid type, which you think may be a Pleiadian. This is a being named Sarah from Altair 4. That Michael thinks, this is a photograph. He says they come from government archives. Somebody like this, you cannot tell the difference in a crowd if he is walking around. This was what Colonel Corso told me was the biggest fear of the Pentagon, that they could be walking in the Pentagon halls and you cannot tell the difference. So what happens is that we have some of these. Travis Walton in this production says to Bonolis, there may be some of them sitting in the audience and you will not recognize them. This gets to be really tricky. All right, so when I was doing this story, I didn't know how to do it because he had so much information that he said to me, it is a slow processed release. It cannot come out too fast. You're not going to pull out the rug from the human beings without putting something to replace it. He said, this is a situation where it is controlled information that came out. So much of what Michael told me is true. Somebody is controlling the output. Somebody wanted me there for some reason. And I was very careful what I put out because I am very careful. There is so much that people tell me I will never print, that I will never talk about, all right? So when I did the Michael Wolff story, I found it to be a story, and this is why I have to tell you this, a combination of spiritual and scientific, which everybody does. We haven't covered the spiritual a lot in conferences like this, okay? Michael's message was incredible. He was basically a scientist that worked in back ops programs that was sorry for a lot of the things he had done because he thought they were for the benefit of mankind, including cloning, because his book starts with cloning a soldier. This is our mentality, you know, Uri Geller, let's get him to be a human weapon. Yeah, let's clone a soldier so that when we, shoot bullets, it won't hurt his skin and we can just send a bunch of these guys into war. I mean, this kind of mentality is what Michael was fighting against. Now, if I don't want to talk too long, and I know what time it is, but I want to show you this video because I knew Michael was dying. So you may be the first to see what he looked like. And, and also his message. As far as how valid he is, this is the bottom line. Now, you're all testimony to what I'm going to say. This story needed more investigation. It needed more because his records were completely erased, his documents were completely erased, and we could not prove anything by documents. The only way you could prove anything with Michael Wolff is to be there in person. And how I did, because he was sick, I had transatlantic telephone calls going on to him every 2 weeks, where he would talk for an hour and a half. My phone bills were over $1,000 a month. How did I pay for that? My father had left me a hereditary. The Michael Wolff story cost me $20,000 to do. I will never get that money back, ever. But he taught me so much, and that story came out, and that book was translated. So this is the kind of work that I do, to bring this to the people. Now, you can decide for yourself. It needed investigation. So I don't want it being written that Paola Harris believes that Michael Wolff was, because Michael Wolff is a fraud, Michael Wolff is a fraud. What's a fraud? Did anybody bother to come and do research on this person other than looking up his credentials? What I'd like you to do is, if you're interested in this story, because this is the best of both worlds, this is the best of what I call an extraterrestrial situation, a hybrid, possibly hybrid situation, and a human situation, is to do your very own research on it. All I can offer you is the videotape that we did on Michael just before he died, where he's talking to people. And it's self-explanatory. I'll take this out here. I have to replace it. How do you, is there an eject here? No, I want to, that isn't Michael, that's the same thing. Here, I'm going to put the Michael Wolf, it's all queued up, I just need to replace it. Did you pull it out? Did you pull it out?
I didn't do it, no. Sir.
Can you, because I can't see without my glasses. Just eject, just eject.
Mine either. Forward. Can somebody see? Can you see? Eject? Control?
Is this eject? Yeah,
Probably,
yes.
yeah. We're both pretty bad.
You can't see the eject. Oh,
Yeah, yeah, it's eject button, okay.
Pretty bad.
All right. It's kind of... Now, who went to see Michael Wolf was Alitalia Captain Max Poggi and his wife Gabriella. He is another pilot with whom I work. Captain Poggi was very interested in this story. He flew to Hartford, Connecticut, spent 2 days with Wolf. If you ever speak to him, he will tell you that this was the most amazing man he ever met. And Captain Poggi did this video for me. And there's Captain Poggi on the left, and his wife here. That's Wolf, yeah. I want you to look at his hands. They're very interesting. The front, you can't hear the talking in the front part until we get to the interview. So that was his apartment. No, that's okay. It's always like that in the beginning.
Have you ever heard of Kurt Vonnegut's book, Slaughterhouse Five? Well, the movie was written by the writer who wrote the script.
Now he's bringing up his Modigliani book because he painted a Modigliani nude at the age of 13 on his lab door. The man was infinitely cultured, even though he never did college, supposedly. I've got one already. I've got one. I'm wired.
But not for me.
Okay, I don't know how. Okay, the wire would be.
And the pocket doesn't open.
No, you can do it on my pants. Come on.
Thank you for your patience.
Timing has already started in 96. Well, I believe even in 93 when I got my first copyright, that, you know, they insisted on my having official deniability and I overdid it by saying, nothing in this book has anything to do with the National Security Council or any other government body of the United States of America or
that disease of the spine, spina ankylosum spondylitis, that disease of the degeneration of the spine. He had diabetes, and he had colon cancer.
What about his hands? What were they like?
They're very. Did you see him when he starts speaking? They're about this long. It's like it's very. You just look at him. They're about this. That was my magazine at the time. We had done a story on the piece of the UFO. There's Jim Carant, who's here. You can ask him about the Michael Wolf story. And okay. This is a painting that Michael did when he was about in his teens of a Russian ballerina. So Michael was incredible. That was a photograph from the book, and this is a photograph. That's a picture of his wife, Sarah. People say he's never been married. Maybe he wasn't married, but that was the woman he had his son with. Those are his credentials on the left-hand side of the wall from the New York Academy of Sciences that they say are hoaxed. So.
The strongest force in the universe today is love. Love is the strongest force in the universe. It will overcome evil. But we must shine a light into the darkness. We must make a rock of ages. We must light candles when there's darkness. We must turn on our flashlights when we see even a little bit of darkness. We must open our eyes. We must also learn to hear with our eyes and see with our ears.
That's another word for telepathic ability.
Your eyes and hearing with your ears is also hearing with your eyes and seeing with your ears, because there is so much of, it seems, an information overload that we've got to get and scrape off all of these heels on this onion of light until we get to the core, which will be the truth, which will be the light, which will be the love that God has put into this universe.
Okay, well. Yes, yes. Yesterday, was listening to an interview that was done with Phil Corso Jr., and they asked him what the solution was and what was important. And I remember, do you remember what your words were? You said, love.
Yeah.
And when you said that, it hit me right here, because this is the last message to Michael, the love that God put into this universe. And you said it in front of that whole group of people. And basically the message is the same. Since it's kind of a spiritual, not religious, spiritual message, I don't get there until the end of my book because I have to do all the scientific part. There's so much criticism and debunking going on. This story has caused me more headache than anything I have ever done for the amount of controversy it has caused. May I encourage you to think in a different way. I am one of the few field researchers, but I told you it cost me $20,000 to do this story from my own money. When you meet somebody and you actually do a story for 2 years with that person, the way Bill Hamilton is doing with Dan Burrish, the way a lot of us are taking on certain stories, we know what we're doing. We are experts, we are professionals, and we have to look at whether it's a viable story to present to the public. What's really hard with the Corso story and the Michael Wolff story, and they're both controversial sometimes, is that these two men are not here to defend themselves. So what leaves is us, we researchers that are doing the work, that did the work, that were with them, that heard them, that can compare notes, can do cross-checking, and feel their story is viable. It presents another problem for me, Paola Harris, in that I'm also spokesperson. I have a responsibility because they're not here. So if I don't talk about them, nobody will talk about them because the story will just stay there. And I talk about Michael Wolff and Colonel Corso all over the world. I mean, I will be the spokesperson for them because they're not here anymore. So I'm very happy to have presented you with this. This is something that eventually, I know Michael would have been very grateful for the fact to have had the opportunity to speak to a larger audience about the message of love, because he really did a lot in his life to spread that message, and with all of his interviews. I know that the other piece that was given to us that you saw that was quite big went to the University of Pisa in Italy to be examined. The people that examined it at the University of Pisa were very serious about examining it. They did not find it to be just any old piece. It's 99% silicon, 1% they couldn't put, they said matter that they could not identify. 99% silicon for me means something. Since the Arecibo reply at the crop circle was that the base was silicon-based life. Is anybody putting together these dots? If you know the crop circle phenomenon, we sent out a message at Arecibo. It came back with a different kind of being, with a configuration chemically where it was 99, it didn't say 99, but it said silicone-based life. So we've got a piece of silicone-based life. Michael said that the living conveyance was alive. He talked about the ship being alive. Now, Michael is not sitting in there inventing science fiction. Man was 58 years old. He had done so much work. He had a lot of the same kind of answers to questions that were very complicated that Ed Fouché had, who also worked at Area 51. So this is like some cross-checking that I had to do. I even made them talk to each other. This is the craft. This is a Roswell craft, though, right? This is a Roswell craft that Phil just gave me.
That's the craft I built down in the corner.
And this is the airplane that Phil Jr. builds down the corner. His story is very interesting too. I would love Phil Jr. to write about his story in a book. I'm always going to also encourage people that have these experiences. And I don't have any. I've got to honestly tell you, I've never seen a UFO, and I'm not a contactee. So can I just put that out there before we start this? How to get started? Because I worked with Alan Hynek, and I absolutely love the man. I did his Italian translations in 1980. When I was working with Alan, he would come to Boulder, Colorado with his wife. We would spend a lot of time together. I would drive him to the stations when he would do his interviews. And Alan Hynek was an astronomer who was very, very credible as far as his type of research. He taught me compassion, he taught me to keep an open mind, and Alan Hynek taught me not to make conclusions about what's happening because he himself did not know. until the end of his days. So that's how I got involved in all this. If you're wondering how I came to do this, I worked with the best of the best. I talk about it in my book. I met the best of the best. I was taught by the best of the best. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm a woman, so it's been very hard in the field to get any credibility, to speak at conferences, to understand who in the world I am as far as what I do. But I'm doing this, and the intention is, and I want to be clear about this, for the planet to understand that we are not alone, we have never been alone, and for you to do individual research. Now, I'm going to do one more part of this presentation, this workshop, and then I'll leave it open for questions, because whether it be David Icke or Colonel Corso or Michael Wolff or Daryl Sams or all the other people I know, and I know these people personally. Carlos Diaz was at my house for a week. He is a contactee from Mexico. I was able to talk to him about the light ships that he's photographed. I can put these things together because not only do I interview the people, usually they stay with me and we talk over pizza. So when you're talking over pizza with people that are big names in the field as far as witness testimony or contact or something, it's a whole different kind of information. So I'm sharing with you a lot of the things that were talked about over pizza. Or in the case of Colonel Corso, and when he came to Italy, he also spent the Easter time at Rapinelli's. So what happened was I was with, and this is Liz who was with me, we'll introduce your wife too, Liz Corso. The deal was that when Colonel Corso came, he came with Liz and two of the grandchildren, or one in the case of Nick when he came by himself, so that they could see their roots, they could see Italy. So what happens? We're up in this hotel at Easter time, and there is no television. Do you remember? So we're sitting in a living room, and we're having the most interesting conversations. Because it's over pizza, I can ask questions. I want to know. So the thing is that when you get personally involved with these people, yes, I'm personally involved with my stories. I feel sometimes I do a lot of hand-holding, I do a lot of protecting, I do a lot of putting together witness testimony, no matter who they are, for all the people to make independent decisions. On my website it says, material to make independent decisions on the UFO phenomenon. There is no predestined kind of conclusions. That's why I don't understand a lot of times why people are fighting over ideologies, or even the UFO community saying this is the truth, this is the truth, this is the truth. Truth is relative. It's relative. I don't think we know what the agenda is, and I don't think there is a truth, because if you go to the Eastern countries, they've got the truth, we've got the truth, everybody has the truth. I don't think we're evolved race enough to have the truth. We're going to have pieces of it, like Michael Wolff says, slow, too slow for me, but slow, processed release of information, very slow. When whoever is in charge of the information feels like letting it come out. Testing the waters for the American public with close encounters of the third kind in 1979 is a slow process release of information, because that is the thing that got me most emotionally involved in this field. I recognized truth. And when I asked Alan Hynek later, who was the consultant with Spielberg on that, I said, is that stuff true? I mean, did they have a landing that was controlled and everybody saw it and all this stuff? And is that true? Pilots disappearing and all? It was truth, presented as science fiction. Told me a lot about that film. Now, I went backwards and did more investigation, and Spielberg went to a party at Francis Ford Coppola's house, and who was present there? Jacques Vallée and Uri Geller. Well, what's Uri Geller doing at that party? They're talking about ETs and how he got these powers when he was 3, and how he had this contact with this being, and photographing these ETs over Israel, and the whole deal, and the whole Pulharich situation, back in those days, in the 70s, and this party at Francis Ford Coppola's house where a young Steven Spielberg is sitting next to Jacques Vallée produced Close Encounters. So, and Gene Roddenberry, major big-time insider. Talk to Richard Hoagland about Gene Roddenberry. He was everywhere. Policeman in LA. Gene Roddenberry had the vision of what this is supposed to be like with the Federation. Gene Roddenberry didn't live long enough to be at this conference, but Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek is the model for what a peaceful future could be like, with non-intervention policy. If you remember Star Trek, they could not intervene in the affairs of emerging cultures. So, you know, it's very, very interesting. So, did I put this together? Yes, and I'm wondering why others haven't. I'm wondering why everybody is in its own little compartment, crop circles over here, abductions over here, everybody's over here. The minute you put this, connecting the dots together, you get a very, very interesting picture of a slow process release of information. All right, now I'm going to go straight to the Corso material so that when we finish this, then you can give me question and answer of whatever you like. Okay, well, you know, I'm very emotional about this whole situation with the Colonel because it was an accident. When I went to Roswell in 1997, I had just come out of a very hard relationship situation where I didn't even want to do anything, let alone go to Roswell. I did not know who Colonel Corso was. I did not want to be there. In fact, I tried to get out of it, but a fax came into the office where I was working with Maurizio Baiata, and Richard Sigismund from Boulder said, we have a van waiting for Paola Harris at the airport. She needs to do this. They didn't know that I really needed to do it because I needed to be distracted. We will take her to Roswell, 6-hour drive, 600 miles, So, because I kept saying to my boss, I can't get there, I don't want to go there, there's no reason. And my boss says, no, you need to go there because I want you to look at the 50th anniversary, because a book is coming out called The Day After Roswell, and we have to cover this story, and I want you to find Colonel Philip Corso. So I went there, and there was no place in the inn. I was supposed to be in Artesia, which was 40 miles away. They had reserved a room for me, but being a responsible journalist and going into my, robotic mode, I went to the press room, and I said, I can't do a story 40 miles away. I said, can I just stay here somewhere? And they said, well, it's all booked. It's the 50th anniversary. You'll never find a room. They said, go into the phone book and try. So I opened the phone book, yellow pages. I put my finger on a hotel. It was the Sallyport Inn. I called up. They said, yes, we have a room for 3 nights. It was a room next to Colonel Philip Corso.
Accident.
I didn't. Sallyport is where everybody was. That's where Bob Dean was. That's where everybody was. And that's where Colonel Corso was. But, the Sallyport is a big hotel. I get the room next to Colonel Corso. Right next to him. And I didn't know who he was. Remember, I'm not knowing who he was. So I had to get over there and do a job. And I meet Bill Burns in the hallway, and I say, well, I didn't know it was Bill Burns either. I said, I can't. I said, well, I can't get over to the museum. It's down the street. I'm not going to walk. It's so hot. He says, I'll give you a ride. Bill Burns puts me in the back of his car. I remember it was a sports car. I was hurting. My head was, I've been in all kinds of situations. And he takes me to the UFO museum where Colonel Corso is sitting there doing his major press conference, because this is a major event. The book, The Day After Roswell, is a major event in history. It is the book that blows open this whole thing, this whole entire situation from a credible witness. So this book was coming out. I didn't know this at the time. I just knew I had to find a Colonel Corso. I didn't even understand anything about the book. So I stood in and Bill Jr. is here to attest to this. So I stood in the crowd until I was trying to figure out how I was going to get to him, because I knew I had to do this job. And he's standing next to me, and he said, do you want to tell that part?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a hallway, it was a little indentation,
yeah.
And she was out here, and I was like this, and she said, oh, I wish I could get an interview with that gentleman. And I said, really? I said, where are you from? And she says, Italy. And I said, I'd make you a deal. She doesn't remember this part. I said, I'll make you a deal. You get my dad a trip to Rome, and I'll get you the interview. So she says, well, how do I do? I said, right now. I said, you got somebody you can call? She said, yeah. You went out of the room. You come back, and she says, the deal's done. We shook hands. I said, okay, I got you the interview. Turn around.
And he pushed me.
This was international people from all over the world. Japan, everywhere. Big crowd. And I'm, excuse me. And I could see my dad, when he doesn't like something, he looks like up like this out of his glass, and I can see him and say, oh no, here comes my crazy son again, Now what's he up to? And I'm pushing her through the crowd, and I said, ask him in Italian, ask him in Italian. She said, what do you mean ask him in? I said, ask him in Italian, ask him in Italian. And I said, hey Dad, I got somebody here who wants to talk. And the room goes quiet. I mean, a complete interruption. And she asked her question.
I asked a question in Italian. I asked about the Santilli footage, you know. I don't know if you've seen the alien autopsy. And I've got to tell him about this because, first of all, I was very embarrassed. I'm asking a question in Italian. Here's all these big cameras pointed on me. I wasn't
embarrassed because I knew it was an accident.
You knew it was an accident. Okay, so I asked him about the Santilli footage, and he answered me this way. Because if you've seen the alien autopsy film, it's very controversial. He said, you know, he said, that rings true to me only because when they peeled off the skin on the eye of the alien, he said, I had that artifact in the Roswell files that was given to me. That was a light collector device. And he said that rang true. When they peeled off the eye, he said, I had that. And I never thought that was an eye. I never thought that was a collector. I thought basically that what that was part of the eye. You know, you always think of the Greys with these big black eyes. I mean, you see in the Santilli footage, when they peel it off, it's a lens that's light collecting. And so I learned a lot. Yeah. For that particular alien, I want to specify because there are a lot of different kinds for that particular body. So when I asked him that question, then I got to meet him after. He said to me, I have to talk to you. And I said, where am I going to see you when I'm going to see you? I did not realize I had the room next to him. Okay, I did not realize that at all. And then I saw him coming down the hallway, and Colonel says to me, I need to speak to you about something. What he basically wanted me to do was take a book back to his friend Rapinelli in Italy, an autograph book. He saw me going into my room. He went into his, and I said, oh my God. And I said, can I have an interview with you? And nobody was supposed to talk to him at the time. And he said, I'll be there at 7 o'clock in the morning. He came knocking on the door. I'll never forget the Colonel at 7 o'clock in the morning. I said, oh my God, how did I ever get this interview? He sat down. He gave me an interview, which I could never print. I decided that, okay? He gave me an interview about contact, that he had met an alien being in the desert who had given him a message, a new world if you can take it. And I'm listening to this man. I said, I don't want this interview. I do not want an interview of something I cannot handle in my databank in 1997. So when I told my boss, I said, I will not print this. They will think this man is crazy, and this man is very credible. I will not print this interview. Until he died, I did not print it. It is in my book, word for word, the interview that he gave me in Roswell, because I was protecting the Colonel, because he had so many other things to say that were viable. Now, that's the Colonel Corso story of how I got to meet him. I consequently brought him to Italy twice with the agreement of Phil Jr. that the kids get to see Italy, and we were together, and I protected him. And I have so many stories about possible things that almost happened there that I don't have time to tell you. But I will tell you that there is a connection between the physical and the paranormal, because after the Colonel died, I would happen to be in Colorado, and I was talking to a Native American lady who is also a psychic, and she was talking to me. I walked in the room, and she said to me, she does not know me. It was a woman that I just wanted to meet because I love Native American people. I walked into the room, and she said, who's the man that walked in next to you? She said, who has medals? You know, she says, he looks like a military man. He just walked in next to you. And I said, no. And she said, yes, he's right beside you, and he wants you to have his briefcase. I got very emotional, and I looked at her and I said, how do you know this? She said, that's a message I'm getting. He wants you to have his briefcase. Well, Liz and I had been hiding the Colonel's briefcase in Italy because it was filled with material that he kept giving to everybody. So we would put it in a closet and say, no, Colonel, it's not time for people to know this stuff. So Colonel would say, where's my briefcase? And we'd say, we don't know, you must have lost it somewhere. And we had been hiding this, and this is the Colonel Corso's briefcase. And for that Native American lady to give me a message like that she could not possibly know, I guarantee you there is a connection between the unseen and the seen. That which we call paranormal, which is probably normal. And there is, your dad wasn't normal at all. But the idea that I would have the briefcase, and I'm, I brought it here to this conference, was his way of telling me that there was something of his he wanted me to have, which I really appreciated, Colonel. And it was very, very nice.
And you're going to get it.
I'm going to get it. Well, the Colonel told me when he was when at the end of his stay in Italy, he said, "I'm not that young," he said, "and this work has to go on." He says, "I'm handing you a hot potato." And this is what his metaphor was. And I said, "What do you want me to do with this, Colonel?" And he said, "You will know. You decide." He didn't say go on with it, or he didn't. He said, "You will know. You decide." He said, "I don't know the things that happened to me in my lifetime." He said, "Were very unusual." He said, "I think you're a little bit like me." He said, "You will know what to do at the right time, what to do." He said, but then he also added, "I will be there watching you." He said, "There will always be one chair in the front row. Just know I am sitting there watching you." This has happened to me all over Europe. There has been one chair empty in the front row. And so I'm telling you that there is a passage. I'm not even going to go into the life after death stuff, because I know Raymond Moody, I know Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, I know these people because I was doing this research way back when. This is all interconnected. We don't have time to talk about this right now. I just want to talk about disclosure. So I don't know how far I'm going into this. I took my watch off, I have to look, but I really basically want to show you the last part of the Italian interview with Colonel, and then you can ask questions. So can we have the lights down a little bit? And this is the rye tape that I showed yesterday at my presentation, where Colonel Corso told it all to Maurizio Costanzo. Maurizio Costanzo is R.J. Leno. R.J. Leno, Maurizio Costanzo, has the highest rating primetime show at night. Everybody watches it. It's the first time in Maurizio's whole life that he was quiet. He was stunned. Maurizio Costanzo usually ridicules everything. He did not ridicule Colonel Philip Corso, and he was in total shock. And as I said yesterday, you'll see a little piece in here where Costanzo will say, "Were there other crashes?" And the Colonel looks up at him and says, "Yes." And Costanzo says, "Do not talk about it," in Italian, so you wouldn't know. And sometimes the Colonel will answer in Italian. He gets confused. Even though he has a translator, he will answer in Italian a question that's asked of him. Did I get it? This is Wolf. Did I put it in there? I must have put it in there. Is there? Okay, let's go. No, this is Wolf. Okay, let me see. It must be in the wrong. Let me see. Here it is. Well, I'm going to go on from where I left off yesterday, just because we don't have the time to see the whole thing. So you people that were at the presentation yesterday, this is the rest of it. This is the rest of what he had to say. This is about the long pencil-like thing.
So then I report back to them. We send it to our electronic laboratories in the hospital. Because it was made in Britain.
Oh, God. I finished just before you go on. Do you want me to come in with you with this?
No, they moved us to 11.
Okay, so
Okay.
I finished at 11. I'm coming to you, okay?
Ha
detto questo, he's speaking Italian.
This being, we call them extraterrestrial biological entities.
Noi li chiamavamo entità extraterrestri biologiche, EBA.
Because it was a biological entity.
Perché si trattava sempre di un'entità extraterrestre biologica.
Thompson said this.
L'autopsia ha detto quanto segue.
It had 4 lobes in the brain.
4 lobi nel cervello.
We only have 2.
Noi ce ne abbiamo soltanto 2.
It had no vocal cords.
Non aveva corde vocali.
It had no alimentary canal for food. There was no food for it.
Non aveva esofago, non aveva modo di mangiare, alimentarsi.
There was no water for it.
Non aveva modo di bere.
So there was no reservoirs.
E quindi non vi erano i generi alimentari tipo normali che avremmo potuto
Our own
ritenere.
astronauts in space, we have to time down when they go to sleep. There was nothing like that aboard.
Non c'era nulla che facesse pensare una vita normale come noi esseri umani, anche di dormire e mangiare.
They didn't breathe air.
Non respiravano aria,
There was no oxygen aboard.
non c'era ossigeno a bordo.
So I was asked, how do they live? How do they propagate?
E allora io mi sono chiesto, ma come fanno a vivere? Come fanno anche a moltiplicarsi, proliferare?
The general asked me that.
Questa è una domanda che lo stesso generale mi pose.
So I told him I read Tesla's reports, the great scientist Tesla.
E io ho letto questo report di questo grande scienziato, Tesla,
And he said our own cells are electromagnetic.
e gli dice le nostre stesse cellule sono elettromagnetiche.
So they must propagate by electromagnetism.
Allora, questi EPA probabilmente si moltiplicano, proliferano attraverso l'elettromagnetismo.
And the being, the way he was composed and made,
E questo essere, in modo così come era composto,
was built specifically for the reason of space travel.
era stato composto espressamente per viaggiare nello
He
spazio.
only had one lung.
Aveva soltanto un polmone,
He had a heart, small.
aveva un piccolo cuore,
He had no organs on it.
non aveva organi qui in basso.
I just told her that lately when I wrote it, I didn't write this at the time, but also, they say he didn't propagate in space. He propagated by electromagnetism, and I told him there were no sex organs.
E appunto la propagazione avveniva attraverso l'elettromagnetismo e poi non avevano organi sessuali.
And I wrote, sex is distracting in space.
E allora nel mio libro ho scritto, certo, il sesso distrae nello spazio.
And every time I tell the story, people sort of smile.
E ogni volta che io dico questo, la gente sorride.
But it was true.
Però è indubbiamente vero.
In fact, just think about it.
In effetti, se ci pensate un
Travel
attimo,
in space, sex would be distracting.
se uno viaggiando nello spazio avesse rapporto sessuale, questo sarebbe fonte di distrazione.
I tell them my age, I can speak without with authority.
E data la mia età posso parlare con questo molto tranquillamente, di questo tranquillamente.
Ma erano 6 gli alieni o era uno solo? Quanti erano? E quando there were 6, I think.
Erano 6.
Tutti morti.
Tutti morti means everybody dead, everything dead.
Dove li hanno sepolti? Dove stanno?
Where are these dead bodies? What did you do with these bodies?
A few months ago, just a few months ago, I was talking to my doctor on this subject.
Parlavo di questo argomento con il mio medico proprio pochi mesi fa.
And he asked me the same question.
E lui mi ha posto la stessa domanda.
My response was this. If we humans, our nourishment and our food is taken away and our air is taken away, our environment,
Se noi esseri umani veniamo tolti dal nostro ambiente naturale, quindi niente alimentazione e niente aria per respirare,
we die and fade away.
noi moriamo.
When we took this being out of his environment,
Quindi togliendo questo essere fuori dal suo ambiente,
it was electromagnetism,
ovvero l'elettromagnetismo,
because he was really part of the flying saucer.
perché lui aveva il suo ambiente dentro questo disco volante.
Take him out of his environment, he faded very fast.
Questo, trovandosi fuori da questo suo ambiente, a sua volta è venuto a mancare molto
The
rapidamente.
bodies faded very fast.
Dopo le faccio qualche altra domanda, intanto abbiamo visto di persona chi ha visto realmente un
There's the Italian book.
disco volato.
This is the book in Italian.
50 anni dopo proprio, perché non ha raccontato per un fatto il generale Futuro, a cui
I wrote the preface to this in the book.
lui ha
You want it?
accettato
Okay, well, keep it. Yeah, you can keep it, except I don't think he dedicated anything, as long as he didn't write anything.
I have copies.
No, give it to Bill.
Grazie.
No, give it to Bill.
lui insomma ha visto un'autopsia, insomma
He says he saw an autopsy. He's serious.
ma anche conferma che non siamo soli.
He said it confirms that we're not alone. This is Italian television. It confirms we're not alone.
Risulti a lei,
He says, were there other crashes?
che risulti a lei.
Were there,
L'unico caso,
well, the only case, no,
perché altri,
there were others.
no dite,
Don't talk about it, don't talk about it.
quindi molti altri.
Many others, multi-altri,
Yes.
yes.
Sì, ci sono stati altri casi,
But I recovered those in my book.
ma non ne ho parlato nel mio libro.
I discussed them with Maurizio Beata laughing.
I'm here with Maurizio. Maurizio Baiada was my boss.
Ride perché ho parlato di questo con lui,
But I didn't put it in the book.
There's my boss and there's me in the front
però
row.
non ne ho parlato nel libro perché sennò sarebbe stato veramente troppo. Veramente.
There's too much in the book if I put that in the book.
Quegli altri dopo,
Those other ones.
qui o diversi?
Were they the same as this, or were they different? The same. They were the
I
same.
have to tell you, I'm going to tell you what I saw, what I showed.
Questo modello da esportazione.
People say there are other beings. I never saw any. I have no evidence. I only told Monsignor what I know, what I saw.
Io posso raccontare soltanto
Because I like your testimony because it's firsthand. I just saw it. Yeah. No, no, I don't want to go into this. This is the Italians are. Okay, this is a comedian, and she's going to go on and say, hey, they're not having any fun because they don't have sex, they don't have hair, they don't have any. And you got to ridicule. Okay, so what she did was she was a ridicule factor for that. But you can see that Maurizio Costanzo, who's the Jay Leno of Italy, who still has a show, is shaken. Yes. And that is the only witness testimony in all these years he has permitted for 25 minutes on Italian television where it has not been interrupted. So it's kind of historical. The Colonel was really happy to be on that show. He liked it when things were done seriously. And I can only tell you from my European perspective that we do not walk around with a little antenna and have like magnets on the refrigerator about this subject. It is darn serious because the implications for it are darn serious. The sightings are not just in America. We have sightings, abduction cases, and physical traces cases in Italy, Switzerland, because Guido Ferrari wouldn't be here doing a documentary if things weren't happening in Switzerland, France, all over the world. The world is curious. The world wants to know. May I encourage us, even here in the United States, to take this subject seriously, to share information, and caution us to work together, because this who tells the truth, who debunks here, whose book is this, whose book, I mean, this is ridiculousness. It is non-productive in the UFO community. I like the fact that we're not calling it ufology anymore. We're calling it exopolitics because it gives me the illusion that this might be something political, something serious, something dealt with on an international and cosmic level. It makes us sound like we are growing up as a human species, which is the only way we're ever going to have real contact. If we start looking at it as some hokey thing that certain people are into, and as we put it aside as something not very serious, as we don't deal with it, and we fight among ourselves even for this, the truth will never come out. And what is the truth? The truth is the fact that we are not alone, that whatever force created us, created others, whether they be biological entities. Colonel Corso was telling me too that there were several races categorized in the Pentagon. So I do not personally believe, I'm up here telling you, because I'm working on another story that has nothing to do with EBEs, has to do with an actual group of people type ETs. And until I do the story, and it'll take me 2 years to do it all, I can't tell you about it, but it's families with children from somewhere else. All right, so until I finish doing this story, I have come to the conclusion that we cannot just put everything in a box and say, that's what it is. We don't know what it is. We just need to do serious research about this. And we need to sit around at a symposium and talk openly about this internationally. So let me close my talk like that, because I'm sounding like I'm preaching to the choir, and say that it's been a pleasure being in the United States. It's been a pleasure talking. It's been a pleasure showing you the information. And thank you so much for attending. And anything that I present will always be for you to make up your own minds, like that's in the book, Connecting the Dots. Okay? Thank you.
If you could just describe a little bit more about the different types of grays.
Okay.
You just mentioned it.
I got very confused because, like you, I was okay. Could I describe the different types of grays? Sorry, did I do anything serious here? Yes. Well, the microphones at this conference are very interesting anyway. It's like yesterday I was watching this. Walking microphones. All right, well, I've been programmed like everybody else to believe the gray is the gray, and here you go, and it's on the magnet on your refrigerator, and all the pictures that they do, and that they're like one type. That is not at all true. I have done, even though I have not printed it, a lot of work, a lot of interviewing of contactees who talk to me about different kinds of grays. Tall, thin ones, The ones that Travis Walton saw, he said they were so transparent that when he went like this with his hand, he said they were so light. He couldn't believe how light they were. He just shoved them apart. So I'm not sure. As an investigative reporter, I'm going, was that a hologram? Were those real grays? How could he do like this and they just, you know, he says they moved aside in a second. They are obviously not grays that are doing any kind of terrible thing to Travis. Otherwise, they would not have permitted him to jump off the bench that he was on, pick up a piece of something and that he was going to throw at them. They would have done something to him right away. They would have stunned him. They would have done something. So we cannot say grays are, you know, dangerous, terrible, whatever, because those grays weren't. And Michael Wolff's grays were, he said Colta was about this high, he was like a child. He had this grayish skin, communicated with Michael telepathically, and wanted to know about how Michael was made and everything about Michael's physiognomy. Colta, I'm not sure, was an EBE. Colta could have been a primitive race of grays. Could have been us from the future, but you know, he didn't even go there. He said, because we know there are groups of grays that come from different places. There are also us from the future. There's also blondes. There are also people that look like us. There are also tall whites. There are all kinds of ET visitors to this planet. Just go to another country. The ones that talked to Carlos Diaz looked dark-haired, exactly like us, but were very strange. Their eyes were extremely strange. Put a hand on Carlos Diaz's shoulder and spoke to him. You cannot put things in categories. You need to just collect this information. I don't know if I answered you, but there are very many types of grays. The tall, thin, the ones they call the doctor type 2 are different.
So they're not like Colonel Corso was saying, these are living and procreating.
That's what
opposed to, you know,
yeah,
something else.
That's what he knows. Yeah. That's his story. That he's very clear. This is the only thing I have experience with, he said. So he was clear on that. Michael, that's the only thing. Colta is the one he had experience with. The secret to all ufology or the research is to put these all together and not make one statement that just completely sweeps the whole field and say that's what it is. No, that is not what it is. When we got some that look like humans, who are the guys that took Travis off his ship? He said they looked like twins. They were all made the same. They were all blondes. Beautiful. He said the woman had beautiful features, beautiful eyes. Is she the same one as Billy Meyer? I mean, let's look at the Billy Meyer case in Switzerland. I mean, you have to look at the whole idea of contact. Just put together all the pieces. Yeah.
When you spoke about Uri Geller, I hear you say he was asked if he could stop the heart?
Yeah. Anytime you are taking money that is intelligence money to doing something with a psychic as powerful as Geller, it's going to be to do something with Geller, and it's not going to be necessarily to heal. All right, now Geller left the United States for a lot of reasons because he was asked to do some things. Okay, so because Geller is extremely powerful. And Uri, when I met Uri, he was very, I mean, my whole story with Uri Geller, I can do another whole lecture. When I went up to him, he said, get that UFO off your website. He says, get off the UFO stuff. It's dangerous. Get off of it, Paula. He said, I'm worried about you. He said, you shouldn't be doing UFO stuff. You should be into the spiritual. I said, well, you know, okay, but you know, I started with Alan Hynek. Where do you want me to go? This is what my work is right now, is eventually going into that. He's scared to death of that whole thing. But Uri Geller is a mystery to me because I am very fascinated by people who have had contact who then have powers. Uri Geller, when I met him in 1980, when I went to take his picture, he was a very handsome young Israeli. I went to the, I saw his spoon-bending ESP act. He's a showman, okay? So I went to his room, and I was going to take some photos. He came out. He was very angry with me. He looked at me because I started taking photos of him. He erased my whole film. I showed that film to Alan Hynek. I said, do you know Uri Geller erased my film? I said, the laboratory in Boulder called me and told me radiation had gone through my film because it was all stripes, and I don't understand why I couldn't get one picture of him. And Alan Hynek took it to some friends of his. So here he is networking. Alan Hynek is UFOs, and he's looking at film that Uri Geller erased. So I'm trying to explain to you, I don't know if you're getting my message. It's all interconnected. You have to look at all the pieces of this puzzle. You cannot throw away that. You cannot throw away remote viewing. I mean, I talked to Russell Targ, who was with me for a week, and he actually trained psychic spies in the 70s, and then you go say that it doesn't exist. You know, so what are we dealing with here? The ESP is part of us. Ingo Swann told me personally, I walked up to Ingo because I'd read Penetration. You want to read a fascinating book? He said to me, you know, he says, he said, we had this ability in our hard drive. It was programmed out of us when we were born. Ingo Swann says this, top psychic in the world. And I said, but Ingo, you know, I said, you did a lot of work. I said, for the government, did you remote view a non-human intelligence on the dark side of the moon? And I got him as he was walking out the door. He turns around to me, he looks at me, and he says, also on the light side. So what am I supposed to do with that? There's non-human intelligence on the light side of the moon, Ingo? Who knows about this? And we're going back to the moon. And why were we invited not to go back to the moon? And were we invited not to go back to the moon? So you want to put together Richard Hoagland? Okay, Richard Hoagland is amazing. Richard Hoagland, for me, is a cultured, intelligent, prepared researcher, and he has been responsible for my reading. Because when I go to his house, since he's always glued to Mars, he's not a very, you know, active host. He tells me to go downstairs and read. And he's got a library like crazy, and I've read 5 or 6 books just in my visits there that have led me by accident to do major research. So I have to thank Richard Hoagland. He is also, Richard Hoagland, for as big a name as he is, was at my presentation yesterday. I was very moved because I feel like I'm a nobody next to a lot of people here. And Richard, who does not get up early, gets up at 1 o'clock because he stays up all night, was sitting in the front row of my presentation, and that's the kind of person that I call supporting, and that was major for me. That was major.
You're not enough. I just want to, you should give that one up. You really, this was great. I actually just want to go to another thing.
Okay.
I really want to thank you.
Okay.
It was really worthwhile.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Where did Gene Roddenberry get his idea about the Federation?
Okay. Gene Roddenberry with Richard. Richard told me that Gene Roddenberry, he was together with Gene Roddenberry, Arthur C. Clarke in the olden days when they all had a dream about Mariner going to Mars. Gene was involved. He was at JPL with them. They all had the conversation together over pizza. You know, I mean, I don't know how to say this. When you have a conversation together. So Gene is sitting there with Richard, who's sitting there with Arthur C. Clarke, who's sitting there with Carl Sagan. I don't want to go into Carl Sagan. They're all going together. They're sitting there, you know. Alan Hynek told me that Carl Sagan had told him that he'd be damned if he ever talked about UFOs and ruined his career or his funding. Alan told me that Carl Sagan actually said this to him just as before they went on the Tonight Show. There are some people who will risk, there are some people who won't. There are some people who, you know, you got to look at it that way. So they're all sitting there, and I'm sure that somewhere Gene Roddenberry is getting the idea about what it would be like to have a peaceful future in cosmic space. They're gabbing about this. Then Gene Roddenberry meets Phyllis Schlemer, who is with the Andrea Polharich group. Phyllis Schlemer, in the Only Planet of Choice, I hate to talk about Only Planet of Choice because it is channeling material, and I have my own qualms about channeling material. But on the Only Planet of Choice, Gene Roddenberry asks the Council of Nine some very important questions. Well, what's Gene Roddenberry sitting there doing channeling with the Nine situation? It's very interesting. I try to put together what I see to see how they all did this stuff. I also read the Stargate Conspiracy, and I think I've recommended it in my book. There's a lot of things in there. I do not agree with the Hoagland part because I asked Richard. He didn't care about UFOs. Richard is not into, he's like Uri. I want to stay with Mars. I want to stay with this. You know, let's not mix the UFO stuff in here. Yeah, but yet Lynn Pickett and the other guy did not come and speak to Richard. They just put it in the book without ever doing an interview with Richard himself. You know, you've got to talk to the people, not just hearsay evidence, yeah. Cropper, okay. Oh, okay. Can I read a crop circle message? It's very important. I was going to end my thing with this. I believe that some crop circles are man-made, but I believe that 80% of them are not. We have some people in Italy who are doing serious crop circle research. I hope that Elger Hesselhoff gets to come here from Holland. He does not believe that what he is testing is man-made. This is a message from the Crabwood crop circle that has a picture or it has kind of an effigy of some kind of alien with some, looks like a microchip thing, a circular thing. It says, "Beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. There is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing." No, this has gone worldwide at all our conferences in Europe. It has been interpreted as code. Even if it's false, this is what is happening. This is what is happening. Even if this is false, this message is in the cosmic consciousness is what is happening. Beware of deception. Bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. There is hope. Now, we take away hope, but we might as well forget it. I mean, this idea of not wanting to know, since when? So we were born to know. It's like what Ingo Swann said. It was in our hard drive to know. Yes?
I don't know. Is your take on like the abductees, like maybe it's hard to figure out even human motivations, much less extraterrestrial?
Yeah.
That in the abduction phenomenon, that maybe they're trying to find a way to save some humanity, some way to adapt us to the environment in outer space to allow humans to survive.
Okay. Can I just say maybe, because I'm not good at abductee interviews. I had John Mack at the house for a week. He's good at it. Richard Boylan's good at it. Bud Hopkins is good at it. David Jacobs is good at it. I leave those guys to do that kind of work. I do other kind of work. And I can honestly tell you, I can't tell the truth from falsity there, and I don't want to go there. It's too much energy for me to deal with the abduction phenomenon. However, I'm willing to talk about it. And with John Mack, I truly believe he is a professional who deals with it. And he told me something very interesting I can share with you. This is only a month old. He told me that the medical research type stuff that was going on with abductions has stopped, a lot of it, where they're taking, ova and doing testing and all. He says that has stopped. A lot of that has stopped. What's happening now is more of a transformational message, more of a dimensional kind of phenomenon, more of having to do with spirit part. And he said that's what he's getting more than the actual. He said whatever they were doing genetically looks like it stopped. Well, he's trying to figure it out. He said it's a lot less, he said, than it was in the olden days. See, he's plotting that. But that takes all that man's time. I do other things. I could not spend the time that it takes to do stories on the contact. I don't like to call it abduction because I don't know if it's abduction. They put them back. So, I mean, they take them and they put them back. So I don't know if you call that abduction. I don't know what you call that. There's a name we use, Americans or humanity uses good and bad. They use abduction. They use these vocabulary words. The only vocabulary word I like right now is exopolitics. It is the only thing that's going to bring ufology out of the dark ages. And I like that idea. I'm really going to push that because that's going to make it serious business. Okay? So if you have any other questions, you can ask me. I don't know if I've gone over my time, you guys. I'm over my time? Okay. I'm going to go to, I'm going to go. And they want that.
But it's not until 11:30.
It's right now.